Hello, my friend, Kurt Harlow here, and you're listening to The Bible Study. It's the podcast where we take the Bayside teaching on all of our campuses. We do the same passage, same sermon series, and we actually take a deep dive into it. And our goal is to learn how to be better Bible study folks, to have some real integrity and some scholarship, not egg-headed, but just very, very solid look in how do you study the different genres of the Bible to get their original meaning. To help me do that, as always, we have Dena Davidson here.
Hello.
Dena, I did a little AI search on the Bible study.
Okay,
just
what
like
did you
who's
use?
watching
Yeah.
and what's it about, just to see. And immediately came up and said, Dena Davidson, the co-host, is there for her apologetics expertise.
Wow.
It lets you,
The AI? Great
AI
job.
likes you.
Very nice.
And
That's
then,
the resume down.
Yeah.
adding to that apologetics expertise, and much more, I might say, for Dena,
Yeah.
is one of my favorite communicators in the world, a really incredible leader, and thank God he went into preaching instead of playing professional baseball.
That's right.
We got Brannon Shortt with us, everyone.
Thrilled to be here.
Shout out to the Folsom campus.
Yes.
All right. We are in our last week of the Psalms, you guys.
How did this happen?
It went very quickly.
It went very quickly. The only Psalms we did was David. You know, he's like the special one.
Right.
There's a whole lot more in there. Hopefully we'll come back to the Psalms again. But we're ending on Psalm 41. And at the end of the episode, I'm going to tell you where we're going next. You don't want to miss it.
Yeah.
All right. All jabbering aside, let's read the whole Psalm. If you're with us and you're sitting down, not driving, go ahead, pull up Psalm 41 and read this with us. Here we go, verse 1. Blessed are those who have regard for the weak. The Lord delivers them in times of trouble. The Lord protects and preserves them. They are counted among the blessed in the land. He does not give them over to the desire of their foes. The Lord sustains them on their sickbed and restores them from their bed of illness. I said, have mercy on me, Lord. Heal me, for I have sinned against you. My enemies say of me in malice, when will he die and his name perish? When one of them comes to see me, he speaks falsely while his heart gathers slander. Then he goes out and he spreads it around. All my enemies whisper together against me. They imagine the worst for me, saying, a vile disease has afflicted him. He will never get up from the place where he lies. Even my close friend, someone I trust, one who shared my bread, has turned against me. But may you have mercy on me, Lord. Raise me up, that I may repay him. I know that you are pleased with me, for my enemy does not triumph over me, because my integrity you hold me and set me in your presence forever. Praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Amen and amen.
Amen.
Now, originally the Hebrew, I believe, Dena, this was sung to the theme of Gilligan's Island.
Oh,
Yes.
yes.
It's so
Can we have a
light.
rendering? I'd love to hear that
There's
performance.
it's just kind of a light song in here where
Yes, not much
we
going
have
on.
sickness and the poor
Yes.
and gossip. And it sounds like an episode of The Office in here. The gossip is going on.
Yeah.
I had to just share this for everyone to hear. I was assigning who led what in our sermon prep meeting. So Mark and I kind of go back and forth and, you know, who gets to come and bring the research. And no one wanted to do the research for this psalm.
Sure.
And it was because everyone was busy with Breakaway and a lot of the things at
Yep.
Bayside. But I was like, hey, will you do this? Will you do this? And so I texted Dean. I said, I know you're not actually preaching this psalm because I usually pick someone who's, you know, going to do the work anyway. And Dean was like, I would love to do it. And I'm
right.
like, this is why you are such a theology nerd.
Yes.
And you came into sermon prep, Dena, and I repented the whole way. I was like,
Yeah.
this is probably the best sermon prep we've had. You did a killer job. And my doubt that this psalm could be turned into a great sermon was squished.
Yes.
So all that to say, give us some insight. What in the world is going on here, Dena Davidson?
Okay, I am so glad that I got this psalm because it's a lament psalm. And so we did a specific form of a lament psalm last week, Psalm 35, which is an imprecatory psalm where specifically we have someone calling down curses on their enemies.
Yep.
So we have a little bit of that going on, but more it's just a lament. And a lament is this old, lost Christian word, which means to cry out in anguish. And personally, I love I love lament psalms because I think they call us to an experience we've lost in the modern day church.
Sure.
And so when you assigned me, I was like, okay, I've got this because this has been...
Your heart just leapt for joy that you were going to do a sad thing.
Lament.
Psalm. Yes, because I know that this is something that we desperately need. And that's
Agreed.
why the biggest category of Psalms in the book of Psalms is lament psalms.
Yes.
Apparently, the world is very broken, and there is a lot of Genesis 3 onward things to cry out to God about.
Come on.
Right.
And that's why we have this passage here. So, do you want me to go into the structure of Psalm 41?
Yeah,
Please do.
absolutely. I like the structure and the overall thing, everything you can remember.
Yes. Okay.
'Cause there was a lot in there.
I've got my beautiful notes right here.
Do it.
Okay, David is the author of this psalm. It's the end of book 1, which, if you didn't know, the book of Psalms is actually split into 4 different books. And this is a lament psalm, and it's a chiasm. So a chiasm is something that is really interesting. So it's a different form of poetry. So we arrange our poems through rhyming, right? And so we pull out meaning through rhyming, but Hebrew poetry, they did it a little bit differently. So they liked to arrange their poems through symmetry. So the repetition over and over again. And in particular, it follows a certain structure like A, B, C, B, A. And the middle of the psalm, the middle of the repetition, it forms a visual arrow, as one scholar has said, a visual arrow for where we, the readers or the listeners or the people singing these psalms, where we're supposed to focus. Yeah. And so as I was diving in and studying this concept, one of the things that jumped out to me is, I'm in charge of sermon prep. So I'm like, all right, well, where am I going to bring the gospel? Because if I don't bring the gospel, Mark's going to be like, there's no gospel in this message. And it's going to be a real problem situation. Yep. So I'm looking for the gospel, and I'm looking where we're going to do this giant climax and bring him to the feet of Jesus. And I was challenged because because this is a chiastic structure, then what we're pointed to is the very middle of the psalm. Can I read you the very middle of the psalm?
Yeah, reread that part.
It's not mercy. It's not praise be to the Lord, the God of Israel, from everlasting to everlasting. Amen and amen. Here is the middle. My enemies say of me in malice, when will he die and his name perish? And when one comes to see me, he utters empty words while his heart gathers iniquity. When he goes out, he tells it abroad. All who hate me whisper together about me. They imagine the worst for me. They say a deadly thing is poured out on him. He will not rise again from where he lies. Even my close friend in whom I trusted, who ate my bread, has lifted his heel against me. Yeah. So the visual arrow, the center, the heart of this psalm, the thing that David most wants us to know is that he is sick. And he's being mistreated. Yeah. And yeah, God's in there, praise is in there, but the center of the psalm, the ultimate meaning is this is a faithful follower of God, of Yahweh, and his life is in shambles. Yeah. And so he is crying out to God and basically saying, this is my state, God. And so that was personally very correcting to me. Like, I'm looking for meaning, I'm looking for gospel, but sometimes it's enough just to acknowledge the human problem, the problem of existence. And that's what's going on in this psalm.
Very good. Can both be true, though? Can there be an echo of David being a type of Christ in here, and it's just plain old him being sick?
I think absolutely. It can be both. I'm always going to challenge the one that we don't pay attention to. So good. I think we're always like looking for Christ, looking for the Messiah in the Old Testament. And that's good, but Christ is throughout. This is a specific psalm that is pointing to what it is like to be alive and following Jesus. And I think it's really important because you can speak to this, Brandon. You and I have had this conversation, but there's these stages in our relationship with God. Mm-hmm. And a stage that is very, very challenging to overcome is the stage where you're disappointed in God. Yeah. And the fundamental reason it's hard to overcome is because your theology won't allow you to acknowledge that you're there. I don't have theology to voice that I'm disappointed in God. And so I can't even begin to cross over this wilderness because I can't say that I'm there in that wilderness of disappointment. Being
honest with God about your disappointment feels like a sin to us.
Yes, exactly.
Sure it
even though it doesn't make any of the 10 Commandments or the 600 and some and in fact is modeled here over and over again.
That's right.
100%.
Okay.
It's interesting too. If you don't mind me on this one, I find it really beautiful. One, to your point, what you just said, you do feel, and we've had many people, we've all been through it, like on the humanity level, that you feel like if you ask that question or you open that door, what if the whole thing crumbles? So not just like sin. If I ask these harder questions, do I lose my faith at the end of this road?
Yeah.
Like, am I able to put this back together? Is God actually going to be with me as we put these pieces back together and build something maybe I didn't even have in my faith before? But I think one of the cool things in this, to your point, Dena, I said this weekend, Christ incarnated. He took on flesh and skin and experiences an immense amount of betrayal. So even on the Jesus piece of this, we're always looking for the cross, resurrection, and again, get it. But at some level too, like Jesus enters these moments too.
That's right.
He also prays, "Why have you forsaken me?" Praying a psalm
Right. Exactly.
to God from a cross, So there's a Jesusness in the humanity of it too, as a God who chose to take on our flesh.
So we've said this, and I'm going to say this, and I got a follow-up question for you, Brandon.
Yeah.
We've said this multiple times as we've studied this, is that knowing the story of David is important to getting the context of this.
That's right.
So I think, Dena, I 100% agree with you in that just the visceral honesty and the visceral pain of David is enough of a point for us. And as we were preaching, what was the psalm from last week? It's been
35.
Psalm 35.
35, thank you. I said that one of the big points of this psalm is not that we're to create dogma from every emotion David has, but we're to learn how safe David felt in praying. So
Yes.
100%.
we don't pray our safe little prayers. We pray these outlandishly honest prayers.
Yeah.
And that is in no way a sin because, as Kevin Thompson said in his version of that Psalm 35 sermon, if we don't pray out our anger will prey on us.
Yeah.
And I really think that's true.
Agreed.
Having said that, though, I can't help but my first reading of this, and I wasn't even thinking about the chiasmic arrows.
Structures.
I got to verse 7, and my first reading was, this sounds like every office space I've ever been in.
Yeah.
Everyone's whispering, the hallway meeting. And then as I read it a second time, all my enemies whispered together against me. I thought of Judas sneaking off
Yes.
to make the deal and the arrangement in quiet.
Yes.
They imagine the worst for me.
Yes.
It's exactly what they're doing. This guy grazed Lazarus. We have to put him to death. This is it. We're going to put him to death. They imagine the worst. A vile disease has afflicted him. Here is Judas following Jesus for 3.5 years, and whether he's demon possessed or what, a vile disease has afflicted him is very good. He will never get up from the place where he lies. He commits suicide. Even my close friend, someone I trusted who shared my bread. So now this could still be him talking about Judas. Could also be Peter.
Right.
Has turned against me. I mean, I don't think David is intentionally doing any of this, but
Sure.
To your point, Brandon, it's almost impossible to not find Christ almost anywhere you look for him in the Old Testament.
Well, absolutely.
Now, having said that, you asked a question where we're off air that I think is, like, I've been telling my folks every single weekend, find the difficult question and ask it honestly.
Yeah.
Last week it was curses. Should we be praying against Billy in HR, who's neither human nor resourceful? Should we say, God, call a curse down upon the HR department in my company because of the benefits they've restricted from me?
And make it a surprise when he falls in that pit,
yes,
Billy.
Read Psalms 35, you don't understand all of it. But there's one question I think that is a hard question in this, and it absolutely makes the psalm powerful if you're brave enough to ask it. And you asked it before when we're out there. What's that question?
It's verse 10. May you have mercy on me, Lord. Raise me up that I may repay them. Have mercy on me and raise me back up. Get me out of this sick bed I'm laying in. And when you do, I'll repay them.
Yes.
And then there's at least 3 angles to view that. And I think what was cool to say off air and now on is the fact that...
go on record.
On record.
Yeah.
We won't know exactly until we ask David one day exactly which angle he was saying. Right. Like, I think there is a worth holding the mystery of it. One of my favorite Psalms scholars has this line where he says, the Psalms depict to us many things, but one thing that it depicts over and over is nothing's off limit in prayer. Nothing.
That's so good.
There's nothing off limit in prayer.
That's it.
Yeah.
I always said, if you gossip in your prayer closet, if you argue in your prayer closet, if you debate in your prayer closet, if you accuse in your prayer closet to God, you'll argue, debate, and accuse far less in your real life. And it's not just a cathartic thing. You know, actually, that sort of catharticism with your anger doesn't help, research says. What it is that when you say all this to God, God says 2 things to you, I think, that are very, very transformative. He says, I know. Mm-hmm. I see you. I saw everything. No one else saw all that. No one else knows how hard that was for you.
Yes.
I see. And then he says, Dena, you said this so clever before. Do you remember exactly what your phrase was about once I complain about all the faults of my enemies, then God has...
I was sharing on last week's episode, basically, like, I encouraged everyone to write an imprecatory psalm.
That's right.
And when I did it the previous week, so going into teaching that episode, I had a complaint against someone, and I was just so riled up about it. And so I did this practice. I wrote out my complaint to God about that person. I'm working really hard not to say their name live on the air right now.
Kurt Harlow is the name of that person.
I was on vacation.
He did nothing wrong. And so I wrote out my case, and I got my complaint out to God, and it was an accurate complaint. And then I just felt the Lord say, that was good, that's accurate, you have a case there, and now I have a case against you. And he
Wait. Bree, if you're looking for the moment to put on Instagram, I think we just found it.
That was it.
And it was such a raw and helpful conversation because I felt so justified in my complaint. And truthfully, it was justified, but I wasn't without blame. My hands weren't clean. Mm-hmm. And so I think unless I had gotten that out, unless I had trusted the Lord in prayer to say what felt off limits, but I knew because I'd read the Psalms, like, I can have this conversation with God. Yeah. It opened up such a conversation that God had probably been wanting to have with me for a while, but I was too busy ruminating on my complaint against them to hear God's complaint against me.
So let me ask you this question. After God had that little convicting moment with you, did you feel more healthy or less healthy?
Oh, so healthy. Your soul knows when it's off.
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the reasons we're anxious. It's one of the reasons we are depressed. It's because there's that's not by any means all the reasons. Sure. But one of the reasons, and I won't even speak for others, for me, often my anxiety, often my just deep-rooted sadness is, I know something's off.
Yeah.
And so when I can hear the voice of the Lord say, this, Dena, this is what is off in you right now. This is the perspective shift that I'm calling you to. This is the forgiveness I'm asking you to walk in. You feel healthier. It's always good to hear God's voice.
I've worked on teams with you for a lot of years, Dena, and I know you're a person of very high integrity. And so I imagine you have high integrity Dena who knows something is off. Mm-hmm. And you have angry Dena who has been offended.
Yes, 100%.
And in a way that only God can do.
Yep. Mm-hmm.
So like if my spouse tries this with me or my close friend tries this with me, a lot of times it doesn't work. Like, hey, you got problems too.
Yeah, exactly.
But when God does it, somehow those 2 Denas just become Dena, or those 2 Kurts just become Kurt. And that's where the health is. Like, both are true. I was offended. I am not blameless. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And now I can have grace on this offense. And I just think that is the point of especially the lament psalms.
And to what Brandon was saying is we actually don't know which David we're dealing with. Mm-hmm. We don't know if we're dealing with the David who was offended and just so he wanted to go out and repay his enemies. Right.
Raise
Or
me
if-
up, I'm swinging back.
That's right.
Yeah.
Or we don't know if we're dealing with the righteous anointed King David,
Right.
who's been given this holy mission from God to go out and to fight his enemies. I don't know if we're dealing with that David who's saying, I have this anointing on my life to execute justice.
Yeah.
And raise me up, God, as you have in the past, because I
Yes.
will do the job. I will go slay Goliath once more.
Right. It's interesting to harken back to what you said, though. One of the things I think when you were saying, I wrote this psalm out for myself and then felt the conviction back, I do find it interesting that one of the pieces of context we know is that he's sick. And I think that can be something that's sick in his body. And that can be something we read over pretty quickly. And if we do the work of dragging our feet into who we are when we are sick, this all of a sudden feels much more tangible to me. And it's interesting to me that right before he says the word, my enemies, he says, heal me for I've sinned.
Yes.
Now, I'm not drawing a straight line. Please, anyone listening here, I'm not drawing a straight line from his sin to his condition. That's a really dangerous theological malpractice we can do. But I find it interesting that he's been slowed down. And it's interesting, I think, when you get slowed down, even if it's something by being sick, you can have more clarity there than you do when all of the rest of life is spinning. Yeah. So he's slowed down, he's sick, and before he actually even gets to the part about his enemies, there's this, heal me, my hands aren't all the way clean either. I have sinned as well. And it's interesting that he's got the clarity on his own sin in the midst of a condition that we don't know exactly what it was. We just know that anytime we're sick, it slows us down and everything else stops. So I find it interesting that if you're in a situation that feels very difficult, and I'm not saying all the whys, none of us can answer that or what all God's doing in it and what he's going to do. But if there's something that is in your life right now that you didn't ask for and didn't want, but it slowed you down, it also may give you a moment that you have more clarity on where you're actually at your own soul level than you did when everything else and every other ball was spinning.
Okay, so let
So
me ask
good.
you guys to take a position here. Best guess.
Take a position.
In pencil.
I like it.
Best guess in pencil.
I only write in
Where
pen.
in the David story is this? Is Saul chasing him through the caves?
Yeah.
Is he at the height of his kingly powers? Is it just recent post Bathsheba? Is it right before the kingdom splits because of Absalom? Or is it during the Absalom civil war? What is your best guess? And I ask only because I already know my guess.
You go first then.
You say it.
No, because then
No,
it'll
you wanna be
influence-
right. Yes.
Okay, I'll go first as long as you guys go. I've got my answer.
I've got my answer.
You got your answer? You
Yeah.
got your answer?
Yeah.
Okay, I think it's right before Absalom civil war. Now, we don't know for sure. Scholars go, it's either at the height of the kingdom or during the Absalom thing. It doesn't sound Saul-ish to you because he is... the reference here isn't I'm on the run.
Yeah.
The reference is I'm settled and sick. I think... Okay, and then I'll take a position on is it right for us to say, God, raise me up so that I may conquer them, repay them?
Yeah.
I will say, yes, it is. If we are the prophetic foreshadowing of Jesus Christ and the King. And by the way, if
I did
some of
not
you
see
are
that
raising
coming.
your hand,
I did not
if
see
some
that
of you are raising
coming.
your hand out there, I'm
Put
the
it down.
prophetic foreshadowing. Yeah,
Cult
put it down.
leaders.
And we are
I made a way in the
King
wilderness.
anointed by God to hold the nation of Israel together so that the bloodline of the Messiah can be preserved. So in other words, there's
check.
there is some context in here. So like I told my congregation,
Well said.
listen, on all these go get my enemy Psalms, you got to start with you're not David. You know,
Good place to start.
again, Susan, who's the head of your HOA and wants you to paint your driveway different, is not Absalom or Saul.
Yeah.
Okay. So but I also think this. I would say my position on this is David could easily say this, easily mean it about Absalom, his own son. Make me better, and I'm going to go get that kid.
Yeah.
I'm going to repay him. And in the very next psalm that David writes and sings, he could say, oh God, my son, where is my son? And and you see that heart of David wanting a reconciliation in the Absalom story. Both can be true. It's not a glimpse into the dogma of God.
Yes, that's
it's a
right.
glimpse into the honesty we can be with God, to your really well-made point earlier, Dena. So that's my position is, yes, you can do it if you're King David, the foreshadowing of the
What's
Messiah?
your pick of when it was written?
What's your
Kurt's
pick?
just going to think I copied him. But I think it's the same. Like, there's the story that stands out to me is when David is so old and frail that this man who's had a problem with women all throughout his story, he's so old and frail that they literally they select this virgin and they're like, just lay with him in bed because he's so old and sick. Just keep his body warm. And the scripture's so specific, he doesn't touch her. And I'm just like, to me, there's a humility and a learnedness and a brought lowness in David's story that to me matches this psalm right here. So I don't know, that's my best guess.
By the way,
But it's
that's a
guess.
great example of descriptive versus prescriptive action.
I'm gonna go read
in
the
Old
story.
Testament.
Exactly.
No.
Yeah, I'm sick. You know what I mean?
You don't do this to your great grandfather.
Yes, this is
Those
an
are-
absolutely
Get him
don't
an electric
repeat.
blanket.
That feels so
Yeah, good
wrong.
boy. I think it's somewhere in the Absalom story too, but I find it interesting. And again, I know we're going to say
So we all three agree it's somewhere in the Absalom story.
but it's those verses. It's the even a close friend, somebody I trusted.
Yeah.
And then I love how, again, the songwriter in me, I love that he says the tender line of you shared bread with me.
Yeah.
And I had a very close mentor one time say the people you trust most in life are the people you share the sacredness of meals with,
Yes.
and you can actually fall asleep in their presence. Like, that's very vulnerable.
funny. Wow.
Like, if somebody comes over to my house and I actually go to my room and go to sleep, I better really trust them. They're in my house.
Yeah.
Like,
So one of my best friends in the world, Brian Carpenter, Refuge Foundation, check it out.
shout out to our sponsors.
We were on a refuge trip this summer.
Yeah.
And Brian and I were strategizing about some future stuff in refuge, and he was telling me the plans, and I was giving him a little advice, like we always do. And we're going back and forth. And we're driving from the river back to Billings. It's about a 90-minute drive. And I said to him, I said, Brian, I love you and I want to help with you. I'm going to close my eyes now.
Because you trust him.
Yeah. And then the next week, he's at the table time they do at Refuge.
Yeah.
And he said, let me give you the definition of a friend. That at any moment in the conversation, they can turn to you and say, hey, I'm going to close my eyes now.
Right.
And I went right to sleep. Okay.
Wait, you got to say this, Kurt, because
Yes.
you're the only guy. The food thing, the bread, like,
Yes.
there's no denying that any one of us, especially if you love food, like Kurt and I think
Yes.
maybe you too, Dena, but as an unapologetic foodie, if you share that, not only is it sacred, it's interesting to me that a lot of the best conversations we've ever had in any of our lives are around that table. The 30% of what Jesus does is around that table. And I love that in his prayer, it's tender enough, no matter what age and stage he's in. He's like, this was somebody close to me. God, all those conversations we had over dinner.
If you go back and look at your life, when and where did you laugh the most? Was it a movie?
100%.
Was it a book? Was it a play?
Yes.
It was at a table with friends.
So true.
In a great conversation.
What evenings did you go when it was over? You go, God, that was incredible.
Right.
I can remember early on in my ministry, one time I had a bunch of my favorite student leaders over and we played charades afterwards. And I remember waking up the next morning and go, did that really happen? And was it that good?
Right.
It was like unbelievably good. So people say, your favorite thing in the world to do is fly fishing. Nope, it's very close. Your favorite thing in the world to do is preaching. Nope, it's very close. My favorite thing in the world to do is cooking
Yes.
and talking and eating and laughing
Yes.
with people I love.
Yes.
And it's just, and
Agreed.
there's a ton of science. Okay, we're running out of time, so I got to go back to Dena, who brought the profound expertise here, and we have to talk about verses 1, 2, and 3. In fact, we got this whole thing
100%.
backwards.
Right,
Yeah.
right.
It's the
Sorry about
Bible
that.
study, and we did the Bible study
Hey,
backwards.
we went right to the middle, which is the structure.
Which was right for the
Why
structure.
in a psalm about sickness, discouragement, enemies, gossip, betrayal, does David start with not just a discussion about the poor and the weak, but what the benefits are of being a person who has a heart for the poor and the weak? Dena Davidson, why does he start with this first verse, blessed are those who have regard for the weak?
Yeah, I think it actually does come back to the middle. So this is going to set up the position that David is in. He is weak. I take the viewpoint that when they're talking about being poor. It's not just, it could be economic poverty, but I think it's more than that. It's poverty of, in David's case, he's ill. Poverty is lacking some good thing. And so for David, that good thing was health. And I think that he starts there because clearly the Old Testament has this like blessings and cursings way that it's set up. Like, do good things, you get the blessings of God. Do bad things, you get curses. And so if you're in a good position, if you're not poor, therefore you have the blessing of God. And David is acknowledging that while there is blessings and curses, there's a bigger story going on. And that is that we are all living in the grace of God. And he's really setting up the upside down kingdom that Jesus comes and he preaches in its fullness in the Sermon on the Mount. Jesus says, blessed are the poor, and that is what David is saying. He is saying, blessed is the one who considers the poor. Why? Because that is who God is on the side of. God is on the side of those who are not fortunate and who are not possessing all the blessings of this world, which was David in that moment. So I think he was really just setting up what he was going to lament and saying, because I'm in this situation, all of you think that God has abandoned me. Not so. God has not abandoned the king. God has not abandoned me. I'm not lying here because of some guilt on my hands. Blessed are those that consider the poor, because that is the person that God is considering.
Love it.
Yeah, anything to add to that?
I'm not going to try to add to that.
Okay.
That was a great
I had one little thought.
Yeah.
This is where I live dangerously. I add to Dena Davidson. That's a dangerous thing to do.
That was a good cut.
Completely and totally agree. And I love the fact that this is the first arrow. That points down, and I love your analysis is exactly correct. I would say also David's presenting his resume to God here. And is it okay to complain to God or tell God or remind God what you've been doing? And I think David is a king who cared for the weak. The mighty men were the weakest of the kingdom, and they were attracted to them, and they went from the worst to first in his leadership culture. So I think he's going here, and it's almost like he's reminding God of his promises. So he's talking more about, God, look at me. I had all the authority, and I lifted up the poor. I canceled the debt. I gave purpose to so many that didn't have purpose. And I'm telling you, God, you're going to preserve me because of that. I'm going to be blessed because of that. So, of course, again, the point here is it's okay to be honest and go, I've said this to God sometimes. God, I have really worked hard to love my children. Work this out.
Yeah.
I have worked really hard for this congregation, for this staff, for this team, and this is not solving itself. I think it's okay to say that, and it's okay to listen to God. You know, the whisper I get back usually is this, Dena. Yeah, I'm on it. Not in your time. Not in your time, but I'm on it. And then, of course, just on the front of it, I do think, especially in regards to our highly contentious, very uncivil, internet-driven culture of trolling comments, like what happened to that couple at Coldplay that cheated on it. That was sad. Not unexpected, though. Oh, there's unfaithful people in our world.
Right. And they go to concerts.
What was so sad to me was, let's just make sure everyone knows we're better than those people. I'm like, half the memes being put out there probably were from adulterous people.
Sure, 100%.
I really am praying, and this will be my application, then I'll go on to you guys. There's a lot of applications we could do here, but here's the one I would say. We have to have much more tender hearts to the weak of all sorts in our life. Even if they're wrong, even if they're illegal, even if they're mean to us, I'd say it is a very, very difficult thing to be trapped in the cycle of poor and weak. And the calling and flavor and texture of followers of Christ has got to be, we bless the weak, we regard them, we consider them. And what does that mean? They're humans. They've got the image of God on them. A softening of heart towards everyone who is supposedly our opponent or supposedly didn't do the right thing and now they're caught in all sort of trouble and we're like, see? I don't know how you live a blessed heart with a hard heart towards the weak. So Soften our hearts towards the weak. It would be mine. That's not the biggest point in the chapter.
Sure.
But Dena, how would you apply this? And Brandon, you get the last word.
Boom.
Yeah. Okay. I am just going to call us to lament. I think the heart of lament is living in truth. And when we refuse to lament, we refuse to live in truth. And God is the God of truth. And how can we be followers of Jesus, understand the biblical story, and yet refuse to, on the regular, like Psalms does, like acknowledge the brokenness that lives in the world? I remember speaking at this women's event, and I was teaching on why does God allow evil and suffering. And this woman at the end, she said, I'm going to confess. We were doing Q&A. I'm going to confess, I am actually not really disturbed by anything. Like my life's been pretty good, and I feel like I don't have this beef with God. And I just kind of like felt this check. Normally I'd be like, well, that's awesome. I don't want to give you a beef with God. But I lovingly, I looked at her and I said, I think you probably do. You just haven't had the honest conversation with God. And if it's true that no injustice has happened to you, there's lots of injustice in the world. Become familiar with it so you have something to lament about, because that's part of the call of believers.
Yeah.
And so application, me as a Dena Davidson, on the regular, I have to say, God, here is the pain in my life.
Right.
Here is the pain in my family's life. Here is the pain in my church's life.
Yeah.
Here is the pain in the world that I see. I can't do anything about this. I can do what you enable me to do, but you're the promiser. You're the one who says, I'm promising Revelation 21, a story that doesn't look like the middle of the story. So God, start it now. Start to heal these people. Start to step into that pain. And we can't pray those prayers if we're unwilling to live in the truth of lament. So cry out to God the pain that you have in your life, in the life of the people that you love, and in your world.
Yeah, love it.
To lament is to live honest. I love that.
And I appreciate as a church that we're going after these things, because I said this to our congregation recently, that you can skip these passages in your reading. You just can't skip betrayal in your life. Like you can't skip that stuff actually happens. So I double down on Dena's point here, but I remember being 17 and probably been a believer a couple years. And a man sat me down and said, to live honestly with God, you're going to have to be able to lament. And I said, well, how do I lament? And he looked at me and he said, well, do you believe God cares about you? I said, yes, absolutely. He goes, then always structure your lament under the fact that God cares. Cares enough to hear it, cares enough to take it on, cares all of that. But he said, I want you to write down the word care. So I wrote it down, and he goes, write these words out. Complain, appeal to God's character, remind him of his promises.
That's it.
And express trust.
That's good.
And he
That's
said,
perfect.
so that's how I would teach you to lament. And he used that beautiful line too. I can't believe you said it. We didn't talk about this beforehand, but when he said, remind God of his promises, he goes, the beauty in that, he goes, the secret sauce, like it's Space Jam. He goes, the beauty in that is God didn't forget. But it does have this uncanny way of reminding you. So you're reminding God of his promises, and in so doing, God's reminding you of what he promised to do. So complain, call out, appeal to God's character, remind God of his promises, and ultimately express trust.
Love it. Love it, love it, love it. All right, my friends. That's the last time we'll ever study the Psalms on the Bible Study Pod. No.
And until then.
No. That was just book 1 of 4.
That's right.
So if you haven't listened to all these, go back on the YouTube. Get a hold of these, the Bible Study Podcast, Thrive Podcast Network. You're going to see a lot of other podcasts there, by the way. They're wonderful. Next week, we are starting my favorite book in the New Testament. Now, as a pastor, you're not supposed to have a favorite book, but this is confession time. I got a favorite book.
Wow.
Now, if I was one of those cool theologian types that, smokes European cigarettes and sits in cafes and drinks black coffee all day and thinks and they wear boots even though it's the summer. If I was one of those theologians, I would say Romans is my favorite book.
Wow.
Yeah.
But it's
that
not.
Is mine,
it's not. I like Romans a lot. But I love the book of Ephesians. Why? Because it's the ADHD Romans. It's so great at telling the story of salvation for about half the book. And then the other half of the book is the most beautiful, psychologically in depth. I mean, it just matches all the research of today, 2,000 years ago. Practical, what then should I do about this grace story in all my relationships, in my marriage, with my kids, my family, in how I treat other people, and how we function as a church. So don't miss a single episode of the podcast. In fact, I encourage you to reread Ephesians right now so you'll be ready next week, and we'll just go verse by verse by verse by verse. And by the way, if you're near any of our campuses, you should get there on the weekend and listen to this teaching as well. It's going to be a great way to start the fall, the school year. It's kind of one of those reboot moments in our year, so do not miss the Bible study podcast as we look idea by idea in the book of Ephesians.